Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into the world of energy, politics, and economics to explore a question that has influenced not only the United States, but the entire global market. How did Donald Trump's oil and energy policy shape America's economy, its international relations, and public perception? In this video, we're going to examine this question carefully using official data, historical records, and social trends. We'll look at the numbers, the social conversation online, and at the end, we'll present a reasoned, data-driven verdict. This is not propaganda or opinion. Everything we discuss is based on facts, statistics, and observable outcomes. Before we dive in, let's outline exactly what we'll cover. First, we'll examine the early phase of Trump's presidency and his immediate focus on Saudi Arabia and the energy sector. Next, we'll explore the economic and geopolitical impact of his policies and agreements, including how they affected oil prices, domestic energy production, and international markets. Then, we'll analyze how these actions influence public opinion in the United States, looking at both approval trends and social reactions. Finally, we'll summarize the long-term implications and offer a data-based AI assessment of these policies. Let's start at the beginning. In 2017, shortly after his inauguration, Donald Trump made a symbolic and strategic decision. He chose Saudi Arabia as his first country for an official state visit. This was more than a ceremonial gesture. It signaled that energy cooperation with Riyadh would be a central pillar of his foreign policy and economic strategy. During this visit, multiple memorandums of understanding were signed, totaling approximately $90 billion. These agreements included plans for modernizing oil refineries, expanding liquefied natural gas exports, and fostering long-term cooperation between U.S. companies and Saudi Aramco. Major American corporations, including ExxonMobil and NextDecade, were key partners. These deals were about far more than commercial profit. They represented strategic investment in infrastructure, technology, and even defense-related sectors. This move transformed U.S.-Saudi energy relations from traditional supplier-consumer dynamics into a strategic partnership with global implications. But what does this matter beyond the contracts themselves? The answer lies in the signals these actions sent to the global energy market. Trump was very public in advocating for lower oil prices, calling on Saudi Arabia and OPEC Plus to reduce costs to counteract Russian influence and support geopolitical objectives related to Ukraine. At the same time, Saudi Arabia announced plans to invest $600 billion in the U.S., with Trump openly suggesting that this figure could rise to $1 trillion in the future. This was not just about energy. It was about establishing a network of economic influence, investment, and strategic collaboration. Next, we need to examine how these policies impacted the U.S. energy sector and global oil prices. Trump repeatedly emphasized the importance of American energy independence, pledging to increase domestic oil production to record levels. His argument was straightforward. Higher domestic production with lower fuel costs for American consumers improve the trade balance and give the U.S. more leverage in international negotiations. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia remained a dominant force in the global market through OPEC Plus coordination. Negotiating production levels became a delicate balancing act between the U.S., Saudi Arabia, and other major oil producers like Russia. While Trump's public statements for coordinated action influenced market expectations, analysts noted that Riyadh retained autonomy in its decision-making, often considering its own fiscal needs and long-term economic strategy. The result was a complex interaction where public statements, investment announcements, and production strategies all affected expectations, even if actual market changes did not occur immediately. Now let's consider the domestic perspective. How did these oil agreements and energy policies shape American public opinion? Access to affordable fuel had a direct impact on consumer satisfaction and economic perception. In states dependent on energy production or where gas prices were a significant concern, these policies could boost approval ratings. At the same time, close cooperation with a monarchy raised ethical questions and criticism, as some Americans questioned whether economic gain was being prioritized over democratic principles. Today, the U.S. produces record volumes of oil and gas, and the idea of energy independence became a cornerstone of Trump's domestic and electoral messaging, resonating strongly with certain voter groups. The long-term implications are equally important. Strategic oil agreements strengthened U.S.-Saudi ties, secured significant investment flows, and provided a measure of stability to global energy markets. However, reliance on foreign suppliers and fluctuations in global oil prices remained a strategic risk. For Saudi Arabia, oil exports continued to underpin the national budget, making the kingdom's economic stability sensitive to global market shifts and international pressure. Trump's energy diplomacy, therefore, was multifaceted. It impacted domestic markets, global energy dynamics, and geopolitical relationships simultaneously. We also need to evaluate the broader economic impact. Investments from Saudi Arabia and energy deals with U.S. corporations contributed to job creation, technological upgrades, and infrastructure development. They also reinforced the perception of the U.S. as an energy superpower, capable of leveraging its production capacity and diplomatic influence in tandem. Yet the balance of power remained delicate because global oil markets are influenced by multiple factors, including supply disruptions, geopolitical tensions, and OPEC decisions beyond U.S. control. From a social perspective, reactions varied. Supporters of Trump emphasized the tangible benefits, lower fuel prices, job creation, and strengthened U.S. energy independence. Critics highlighted the ethical and political concerns of close ties with a monarchy and questioned the transparency of large investment agreements. Online discourse mirrored these divides, showing how complex energy policy can generate both approval and criticism simultaneously. If we synthesize all the data, a clear picture emerges. Trump's energy strategy was strategic and pragmatic, aiming to strengthen America's economic position, influence global markets, and secure long-term investments. It was a policy that balanced domestic benefit with international leverage. However, it introduced interdependencies, risks, and public debate about ethics and strategy. In conclusion, the analysis shows that Trump's energy and oil policies were far more than routine agreements. They were part of a coordinated strategy with multiple layers: economic, geopolitical, and social. They shaped public opinion, influenced fuel prices, affected domestic production, and sent signals to global markets. While there were risks and criticisms, the data indicates that these policies strengthened the U.S. position in energy and international relations. The AI assessment, based on cross-checked statistics, public perception, and economic outcomes, concludes that Trump's energy diplomacy was effective in achieving strategic goals, with outcomes that remain measurable, verifiable, and subject to independent analysis.